Guys, benpaines here, and today we're back once again for another video, and this time we're somewhere a little bit different. We are actually over on the other side of the country compared to where we're used to, at Teamsport Basildon for a Monday night social event, something that I haven't done in a little while. I came over here whilst I was doing a bit of uni work for my uni course that I'm currently doing, so I thought I'd come over, give the track a go, as I just didn't see any reason why not to, and honestly it was a whole heap of fun, as you will see throughout the rest of the video. But before we jump into the rest of it, if you are new to the channel, or if you haven't already, can you make sure to hit the subscribe button down below, as I really do appreciate it. And if you enjoy this video, please leave a thumbs up as well, as it really does mean the world to me. However, we're going to jump straight into the video here, and you can see that our first lap is a 40.423 second lap time, where I don't quite understand where the start finish line is, so I've used it as the corner, and all the times link up on the Teamsport app, so it seems to work out pretty well. However, you can see at the beginning of the race we are under, or in the beginning of the session, sorry, obviously we're not in a race this time, we are just hot lapping. We're under a bit of pressure from the driver behind, who we've been able to make our way past quite quickly, and they gave us a little bit of a nudge coming out of the bottom section of the track. However, getting into the track a little bit, I found the top section of the track was really wide, really grippy, and then as you go down into the bottom section of the track, it's completely the opposite. As soon as you hit the concrete on the bottom, it is slip central. Now obviously I locally race at Bristol, which is known to be sort of similar. At the top it is very grippy on the wooded surface, however once you get downstairs it is very slippy. However, this didn't quite match up to how slippery the surface of this track really was. Obviously the camera doesn't quite do it justice, but the track is also extremely wide, and it made for a really enjoyable session. You were able to actually perform some switchbacks on people, more akin to outdoor racing, which you can't usually do in a very clean manner in an indoor track, in my opinion. There's always a little bit of contact. However, when I came on this evening, I found that the width of the track was really suitable just for a bit of actual racing. So we're coming around on our next lap. You can see as we head into the downhill section of the track, we are coming across the line with a 40.186, so we are improving every lap so far. I believe my fastest lap in the previous session was a 39.8, and obviously I'm doing 3 sessions. The session you are watching is the second one, as the third session and the first session was literally just me hot lapping. Not a lot really happened, but the most sort of happened in this session. This was also my fastest session. So leading on into the next lap, you can see we come across the line getting quicker every lap, of 40.006, which I was really happy with. I felt that I was getting quicker and quicker the more I was doing the track, as I was just getting a little bit more stable under braking and applying the throttle, and I was also just finding some better lines throughout the sort of progression of the session. Obviously at the beginning I was sort of a bit all over the place, especially with how slippy this bottom section was, but once I understood a little bit more of the fundamentals of the track, I found that I was up to a decent pace pretty quickly compared to some of the other members that obviously come here week in, week out. Now again, we're just trying to stay as close to the apexes as we can, not using all the track in this top sections. I found that minimizing the track distance really helps sort of the times overall, rather than just trying to really go out as wide as possible to get a good run, because I just felt like that was a little bit of a waste of time. And again, hitting this double apex, probably one of the most difficult corners on the track. I wasn't quite hooking it up correctly as much as I wanted it to, and this obviously caused the back end of the kart to slide out quite a fair bit as we were coming round on the opening few laps, which obviously costed me quite a substantial amount of time. Everywhere else I felt like I was pretty on the pace. Again, you can see trying to stay as tight to the apex as possible, braking early, and on some occasions once I got up to speed I wasn't even braking at all and just using the steering wheel as a brake, just to use my input, just to slow the kart down. And the best way that I can compare this to is at the bottom hairpin before you go up the ramp at Teamsport Karting. Obviously not quite using the brake, but instead just using the steering wheel just to slow down the kart enough to get a decent run coming out of the corner. And again, on the bottom section of the track, I found that you really did have to use good throttle control here. It wasn't a case of just slamming the throttle down much like you do at other team sport tracks. Instead, you did have to use a careful application to ensure that the rear tyres didn't spin up, obviously causing you to lose grip and lose crucial temps that all really add up over the course of a lap. You can see there a little bit slower, 2 tenths off the pace compared to my fastest lap so far, 39.959, and again we're just trying to take some nice clean lines, trying to stay as stable as possible, especially on the bottom part of the track, just to ensure that we get a nice run coming out of each of the corners, which obviously makes our lap times a lot quicker. Now coming into this bottom hairpin here, a really fun corner. I found that you could get the car really sideways. Obviously it's not captured fully on the camera, but it did feel almost a bit like Tokyo Drift going through that corner, just to ensure that you've got the rotation that you needed to get on the power as early as possible coming out of that corner, as it is a crucial one before you go up the ramp. And again, we come across the line with our fastest lap so far at 39.445, and now we're going to lead into the part of the session where we're going to try and make some overtakes on a track that we don't really know. So we're just going to try and look for when the driver's up ahead, sort of give us a bit of an opening to maybe make a move down the inside or around the outside. Who knows where we're going to end up. Now you see the driver on the outside there goes quite wide, so we head up the outside of them and manage to pull off an overtake around the outside. A little bit of contact from the driver on the inside, but we're able to make it stick, which I was quite happy about. We've got two drivers up ahead, which I know in my own head that we were quicker than them, so we're just going to try and sort of ignore the fact that they're in front of us, put in some decent lap times. However, you can see that being in the traffic is sort of detriment to our lap times quite a bit. We're 2 seconds down compared to where we were earlier in the session when we had a bit of clean air. So you can see the guys up ahead are sort of battling with one another. I was waiting for a little bit of an opening here, and you can see that the driver in front of me is taking a bit of a narrow line, which on reflection from watching this video probably was a better line to use, as I found that going super wide as I was to try and maximise my exit out of that corner, I found that using a bit of a tighter line from watching this back was actually more beneficial compared to using all the track on the left hand side before turning right into that section of the track. So I don't know if I ever go here in the future maybe to try that out, but as we come across the line here, we do make the overtake stick on the bottom section of the ramp on one of the drivers coming across the line by 14.644. We had a look up the inside there on the driver in kart 16, decided to back out instead of causing a huge incident coming down the ramp. And again, we're just trying to set up the same move that we did in the last lap, but you can see how much drive we are getting out of the corner from using that line. However, it doesn't really close us up to the driver up ahead. And again, we're trying to get a good sort of run coming out of the bottom hairpin, and again we managed to get it to work coming up the ramp, but the driver doesn't really want any of it and decides to just completely barge us into the barrier and then again punt us off the apex, which I was a little bit confused about, a little bit annoyed about, as I was just a bit confused. So you can see me wave my hand there just to be like, well, what are you actually doing there? Don't really understand why you're defending like that, or deciding to just blatantly drive into me as we come up the ramp. So luckily we were able to begin to break away from this driver, as I didn't want to hang around them too much, as they were using this session more as a bit of a bumper kart session rather than driving around. So just wanted to get my head down here and try and put in some consistent laps to try and beat our time that we set out so far, which is a 39.445. Obviously the closer we can get to a low 39, the better, in my opinion. Obviously I was told by Ethan, who was the team manager on the night, that if we could get into the 39s, then it would be a really good time. So we've already managed to sort of achieve this goal, and now we're just trying to get as quick a lap time as we can coming into the latter stages, or the second half of the session. Obviously when I came onto the track I didn't know what the conditions would be like, what the karts would be like, so I was really happy to initially get into the 39s in the first session, obviously due to it just being completely new to us. And I believe in the first session I did actually finish third on track in terms of lap time, which I was really happy with, especially as I have never been to this track before. So again, we're just trying to maximise our steering angle, as I mentioned, coming up the ramp, obviously missing the apex a little bit there, which is going to cost us a bit of time, but we do come across the line with a bit of a better lap compared to when we were in traffic once again, with a 39.931. And now that I knew we had a bit of clean air ahead of us, I was just going to try and use everything that I'd learned so far to try and put in as clean and as quick a lap as I possibly could. So you can see again, I'm going quite wide before switching back into this right hand hairpin, which I don't think is really needed. I think staying more to the middle of the track is a better way to take that line, but I just was locked in my ways of staying as far to the left as possible before turning in to try and maximise my sort of speed out of the corner. And again, you see we're just trying to just stay as stable as possible, using the steering as a brake once again through the two hairpins rather than using the brake, and this consequently has given us our fastest lap of the session so far at 39.422, and I knew that we could improve on this with more track time, more laps as we're going around in this session. So again, trying to stay as tight to each of the corners as we can, unfortunately messing up our corner a little bit there, going a little bit wayward. As I mentioned, it is very slippy on this bottom section of the track, and again just missing the apex completely there, which is obviously costing us a few tenths on this lap, but I was determined to try and claw that back into the top section here. As you can see, turn in nice and early before we reach the crest of the ramp, and that causes us to get a good line coming through the double hairpin section before we come around the start finish line once again. So that lap was about a tenth slower than our previous lap, but obviously we can notice pretty clearly where that time is lost in this lap. And again, trying to sort of run it out quite wide coming out of that double apex corner, coming down the ramp, as I just felt that taking a shorter line did actually feel better rather than trying to switch it back to the right before turning to the left once again, as I just felt that I lost a little bit too much momentum, and the way you're turning the wheel too much all the time left and right, it did just lose the grip on the back of the kart. So again, we're coming around on this lap, trying to stay as tight as possible once again to the hairpins in the top section, as I mentioned, every lap, and this has led to us having our fastest lap of the session once again at 39.4 dead, which I was really happy with. We're obviously gaining time throughout the session, which is always a positive, apart from when we were in traffic, which of course is always going to happen, trying to make some overtakes stick. And we can see there was a little bit of a reference up ahead of us. There is another driver on track who is about 5 seconds ahead of us on track, so we're just going to try and put in the best lap times that we can to try and catch up with them before the end of the session. As I've mentioned in many videos before, I find that I do drive better when there is a reference up ahead of me to try and aim for, so this is obviously what I was aiming to do in this session, because when you just drive around on your own, especially on a track that you don't know, it is very difficult to try and find the lines, find the braking points, and just try and get a quick time. But we come across the line very consistent once again, 39.448, so within a tenth of our last lap, which I was really happy with. And the next couple of laps are all very consistent, which I was really happy with. Obviously, having overall just quick pace is always good, but if you're able to do this consistently over the course of 4 or 5 laps, then this is obviously always going to be better over sort of a prolonged period of time, especially in a race scenario where you have to be as consistent as possible, which obviously links to our last video at BIKC, where I mentioned the consistency in that one was obviously what separated myself from the top tier drivers. So again, we come across the line only 3,000 off our fastest lap so far at 39.403. So as I mentioned, very consistent lap times so far, and we're just trying to be as smooth as possible through this bottom section, because obviously this is where I felt personally that most of the time was gained or lost, finding sort of the grip where it was on the track, and obviously applying the throttle as early as possible out of the hairpins to ensure we got a good drive going into the rest of the track. So we're coming up the ramp once again, turning in early before the crest, as I mentioned, missing the apex slightly on this one, and again trying to get as close as possible to the second hairpin as we come across the line once again with a 39.580, so about a tenth and a half off our fastest lap so far. A few mistakes in there which obviously have been pointed out, which we can obviously learn from if we're ever to go back here once again. And here once more, we're just trying to really hit both of those apexes through that double left hand corner, as I found that that was a really enjoyable corner or complex section of the track to drive through, as it really did test your throttle control coming through and around that bottom section of the track. So again, we're coming up the ramp once more, catching up with the drivers up ahead of us, obviously as I mentioned, using them as a bit of a marker to see what our overall pace is like against the members. And we come across the line with our fastest lap time of the whole session, and in fact of the evening, with a 39.385, which I was really happy with. Obviously I was down in the low 39-second lap times, didn't expect to be there if I'm honest. Obviously at the time of recording, I have been trying to lose a bit of weight compared to where we were at BRKC, so I was really happy to sort of be on the same pace as some of the top drivers that were here on the evening. So I actually finished this session in second position, which honestly I couldn't be happy with. Wasn't quite up to the pace of Robbie Harrison, who was there on the evening. He was the fastest member that I saw on the night, who managed to get a 37-second lap time, I believe. However, he was in the rocket ship car, which I have been told the car is a lot quicker compared to any of the others. So we're coming down into the last sort of part of the session here, and we're just trying to utilise what we've learned to try and make some more overtakes coming into the end of the session, rather than sitting behind some of the other members. So you can see one of the drivers there in car number 11 goes quite wide, and that allows us to pull off a nice switchback in the bottom section. And again, we're still trying to catch up with the driver in the red suit, who we have sort of been raining down on throughout the rest of the session. So again, we're just trying to take as tidy lines as we possibly can coming into the latter stages of this lap. However, this was in fact the very last time lap of the session, so you can see that we came across the line on our very last lap. We're 40.376, and our fastest lap of the evening was 39.385, which I was really happy with. Really solid pace, which is a little bit gutted not to quite get into the 38-second lap times. However, this does in fact bring us to the end of the video, guys, so I hope you have all enjoyed it. If you have, can you please leave a like on the video down below and subscribe to the channel if you're new or if you haven't already, as I really do appreciate it. The 2024 season is just about to kick off, so I'm really excited to bring you guys all the footage from this year. As always, in the description is my link tree, which has all my socials. But in the meantime, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Take care.